My father taught me that a house isn't just wood and nails. It remembers those who keep their word. Yet 6 months after his funeral, a stranger stood on the porch he built, ordering the demolition of his last bookshelf. "What can a daughter like you do?" they asked. I didn't argue. I opened my laptop, pulled up the folder labeled Estate Evidence, 274 photos, 63 receipts, 19 confirmation emails, and one handwritten letter from my father. They thought I'd cry. I chose to file. And when the judge read the verdict, I finally understood some revenge doesn't need screaming, just a court seal. My name is Ava Rourke, and I learned early that inheritance isn't about what you receive, it's about what you're willing to protect. Dad built his reputation one restored beam at a time. Thomas Rourke wasn't just a contractor, he was a keeper of stories. His business, Heritage Restoration, LLC, specialized in bringing century-old buildings back to life in Riverfield, Cascadia. "Build trust first, build houses second," he'd say, running his calloused hand along the original crown molding of our 1912 Craftsman home. Every client knew if Tom Rourke touched their property, it would outlive them all. The house itself was his masterpiece not because he built it, but because he saved it. When he bought it in 1995, the previous owners had covered the Douglas fir floors with linoleum, painted over the built-in cabinetry, and ripped out half the original fixtures. Dad spent 15 years reversing the damage, teaching me the difference between restoration and renovation. Renovation erases history, he'd explain, showing me how to match wood grain. Restoration honors it. I was 23 when he first showed me the estate documents. Senior year at university, home for Thanksgiving, complaining about my algorithms course. He pulled out a leather folder from his office safe. Inside the deed, the trust, pages of maintenance schedules, even pH soil tests for the garden. "This goes to you," he said simply. "Your mother has lifetime residency rights, but with conditions." The conditions seemed overcautious then. No structural modifications without historical preservation approval, no third parties given decision-making authority, maintain the property's historical designation status. Mom laughed when she read them. "Your father thinks someone's going to steal his workshop," she joked. Dad didn't smile. "I think someone might try to steal its soul." The cancer took him faster than any of us expected. 9 weeks from diagnosis to funeral. But even with time running out, he updated every document, photographed every original feature, created video walkthroughs explaining the quirks: which floorboard creaked third from the left, top of stairs, why the basement door stuck in winter foundation shifts 2 millimeters, how to maintain the original steam radiators. "You're the only one who understands what this place really is." He told me 3 days before the end. His hands, once strong enough to lift oak beams, could barely hold the pen as he signed the final codicil. Not just a house, it's proof that things can be saved. Mom grieved hard. The house echoed with absence. Dad's coffee mug still on his workshop bench, his pencil marks on door frames where he'd planned repairs. She wandered the rooms at night, running her fingers along surfaces he'd restored. I moved back temporarily from my apartment near Hyperweave Labs, working remotely to keep her company. She needed someone. I understood that. What I didn't understand was how quickly she'd decide who that someone would be, or how systematically they'd begin dismantling everything my father had preserved. Stephen Hale arrived with a casserole and stayed for everything else. He'd been leading the grief support group at First Methodist, the one Mom started attending 3 months after Dad's funeral. Tall, silver-haired, with the kind of smile that made widows trust too quickly. He had a contractor's hands, but an insurance salesman's smooth talk. "Your husband's work was legendary," he told Mom during his first visit to the house, though I always thought he was too married to the past. By month 4, he had a coffee mug in our kitchen. By month 5, he was fixing things. The first change was subtle new handles on the kitchen cabinets. "The original ones are tarnished," he explained, tossing the 1912 brass hardware into a box. "These are brushed nickel, modern, clean." Mom nodded along, still foggy with grief. I retrieved the originals from the trash that night, stored them in Dad's workshop. Then came his adult children, Blake, 30, unemployed, living off disability claims that seemed to evaporate around his motorcycle hobby, Lena, 32, between her third and fourth marriages, always needing a place to just crash for a few nights. They'd appear for dinner and stay for weeks, their presence expanding like water damage through the house. "Family takes care of family," Stefan would say, watching Blake's muddy boots track across the original hardwood. "Your father would understand." My father would have thrown them out after the first scratch. The alterations accelerated. White paint over the natural wood trim in the guest bedroom brightens the space. The hand-carved newel post at the bottom of the stairs, loose for decades, in a way Dad said gave it character, was replaced with a machine-turned piece from Home Depot. The original glass doorknobs, warped and beautiful, swapped for lever handles, easier for aging hands. It's still Mom's house, too. Friends reminded me when I complained, but legally, it wasn't. The trust was clear. Mom had residency rights, not ownership, the right to live there, not to destroy it. I documented everything, photos before and after each change, receipts I found in the trash, the original fixtures hidden in garbage bags. Blake's motorcycle leaking oil on the garage floor Dad had kept pristine for 30 years. Lena's boyfriend of the month using Dad's workshop tools to fix his truck, leaving them rusted in the rain. "You're overreacting," Stefan told me when I confronted him about the paint. "Houses need updating. Your father's gone. Ava. The living matter more than monuments to the dead." "This house is on the historical registry," I reminded him. "These modifications could invalidate its status." He laughed. "Who's going to report at you?" The gaslighting was surgical. Every concern I raised became evidence of my inability to let go. When I pointed out the trust's provisions, I was controlling. When I saved original fixtures, I was obsessed with the past. Mom, desperate for stability, echoed his words. "Stefan's trying to make this a home for our future," she'd say. "Why can't you accept that?" Because our future was being built on the destruction of everything Dad preserved. Each improvement erased another piece of his work. The built-in spice rack he'd restored, board by board gone, replaced with plastic organizers. The period-appropriate wallpaper in the dining room, painstakingly sourced from a specialty company in Maine, painted over in beige. I started visiting less, but documenting more. Every visit, I'd walk the house with my phone, recording video, taking pictures, noting changes. The workshop, once organized with labeled pegboards and restored antique tools, became a graveyard of Stefan's failed projects and Blake's motorcycle parts. 6 months after that first casserole, Stefan made his move. "We need to talk about the house," he announced at dinner, "about making this arrangement more official." "I want to be added to the deed," Stefan said, sliding a folder across the dinner table. "After all the sweat equity I've put into this place, it's only fair." The folder contained an itemized list, labor hours for his improvements, receipts for the materials he'd used to destroy Dad's work, a total at the bottom, $47,000. "This represents my investment in our family home," he continued. "Your mother agrees it's time to make me a legal co-owner." Mom nodded beside him, wouldn't meet my eyes. "It makes sense. Ava, Stefan's been so dedicated to improving things." "The house isn't Mom's to give," I said quietly. "She has residency rights. I'm the owner." "On paper," Stefan countered, "but morally, your mother's lived here for 35 years. I'm her partner. Blake and Lena are making this their home base. He gestured dismissively. "You have your own life, your fancy tech job. You barely visit." That weekend, they called a family meeting, except it wasn't just family. Stefan had invited Pastor Williams, Mom's book club, 3 neighbors, and his brother, a real estate agent who'd prepared some market comparisons. They gathered in the living room Dad had restored. Under the original coffered ceiling, Stefan wanted to modernize. "We're concerned about Ava," Stefan began, his voice dripping paternal concern. "She's having trouble processing her grief, clinging to the past in unhealthy ways." The ambush was coordinated. Pastor Williams spoke about honoring thy mother, Mrs. Patterson from next door mentioned how selfish it seemed to deny Mom happiness. Stefan's brother presented printouts showing the house could be worth $1.4 million with proper updates. Blake sat in Dad's leather chair, work boots on the ottoman. Lena dabbed at her eyes, though I hadn't seen her shed a tear since arriving. "Your father would want your mother to be happy," Pastor Williams intoned. "Holding on to material things, fighting family, this isn't healing. Ava. Family." I looked at Blake, who'd sold Dad's antique-level set on eBay, at Lena, who'd thrown out boxes of Dad's client records to make room for her aromatherapy supplies. "These people aren't family, they're opportunists." Mom gasped. Stefan stood. "You're clearly too emotional to discuss this rationally. Maybe you should take some time. Talk to someone professional about your inability to move forward." That's when I stopped defending and started documenting with purpose. Every visit became reconnaissance. I photographed the new damage holes in the plaster from Blake's dartboard, water stains from Lena's bathroom negligence, the century-old rose bushes Dad had nursed, now dead from Stefan's weed killer. I recorded conversations on my phone, Stefan bragging to his golf buddies about scoring $1 million property, Blake telling his girlfriend how they'd push the uptight bitch out soon enough. I pulled building permits. Stefan hadn't filed a single one. I hired an independent assessor who confirmed $85,000 in damage to historical features. I created spreadsheets tracking every violation of the trust's provisions, every unauthorized modification, every broken preservation guideline. "You're not welcome here unless you can be supportive," Mom told me after I questioned the new vinyl siding Stefan wanted to install. "This is my home." "No," I replied, saving the email she'd sent approving the siding approval she had no legal right to give. "It's mine, and I'm done pretending otherwise." I stopped visiting but didn't stop watching. Security cameras Dad had installed still fed to my phone. I watched Blake dealing motorcycle parts from the garage, watched Stefan meeting with contractors, planning to gut the kitchen, watched Mom sign papers she shouldn't be signing, make promises she couldn't keep. They thought my absence meant surrender. Stefan told everyone I'd finally accepted reality. Mom told her friends I was working through things. Blake started parking in my spot. They had no idea I was building a case file that would destroy their delusions. Every photo time-stamped, every video backed up in triplicate, every email archived. My laptop held 274 photos, 63 receipts, 19 email confirmations, and one handwritten letter from Dad that would change everything. The letter I hadn't shared with anyone, the one that explained exactly why he'd structured the trust the way he had, the one that began, "If you're reading this, someone is trying to take what I left you." Harold Ames had been Dad's attorney for 20 years. His office still smelled like pipe tobacco and old leather, even though he'd quit smoking a decade ago. I spread my evidence across his conference table photos, permits, receipts, transcripts of recorded conversations. "Your father was thorough," Harold said, reviewing the trust documents, "but you've been more so." He held up the before and after photos of the dining room. "This alone constitutes material breach of the preservation conditions." "Can we stop them?" "Stop them," Harold smiled grimly. "Miss Rourke, we can evict them. Your mother's residency rights are conditional. The trust explicitly states no structural modifications without written consent from the trustee. That's you. No third parties may be given decision-making authority over property matters. Every one of these changes violates her residency agreement." He pulled up the county assessor's website. "The historical designation is also at risk. These modifications could trigger a review, potentially costing you significant tax breaks and reducing the property value by hundreds of thousands." "What about Stefan's sweat equity claim?" Harold actually laughed. "In Cascadia, sweat equity applies to marital property or explicit partnerships. He's not married to your mother. There's no written agreement. He's essentially confessing to vandalism of property he doesn't own. His itemized list. It's evidence of damages you can pursue in civil court." We spent 3 hours building the case. Harold had me organize everything chronologically. The architectural assessment confirmed $85,000 in damages to historical features. The compilation showed 47 unauthorized structural modifications, 23 violations of historical preservation guidelines, 12 instances of original fixtures being removed or destroyed, 8 months of documented trespass by Blake and Lena, 0 permits filed for any modifications, 0 written consent from the legal owner. "The letter from your father," Harold said, reading it for the third time. "This is devastating to any claim they might make." Dad had written it 2 weeks before his death. "Ava, if you're reading this, someone is trying to take what I left you. I structured the trust this way because I knew your mother's weakness for needing someone to lean on. She deserves a home, always. But she doesn't understand preservation. The house will outlive us all if protected. If someone new comes into her life, they'll see dollar signs, not heritage. The conditions in the trust aren't just legal formalities. They're shields. Use them. Every modification without your written consent is breach of contract. Every unauthorized change is vandalism. Document everything. Harold has copies of all original photographs and assessments. The house isn't just your inheritance, it's your responsibility to future generations. Don't let anyone guilt you into surrendering it, not even your mother, especially not someone who claims to love her while destroying what I preserved. Trust your instincts. Love, Dad." Harold prepared 3 documents. First, a notice to cure formal notification that Mom was in breach of her residency conditions, with 30 days to remedy all violations. Second, a cease and desist ordering immediate halt to all modifications. Third, a demand for restoration outlining required repairs to return the house to its documented historical condition. "They'll ignore these," I said. "Probably," Harold agreed, "but that's actually better for our case. It shows willful disregard after formal notice. When we go to court, the judge will see we tried reasonable remedies first." I signed the papers. Harold sent them certified mail, requiring signature. The security cameras caught Stefan signing for them, reading them on the porch, then crumpling them up. "Lawyer letters," he told Mom. "Don't worry about it. She's bluffing." Mom called me crying that night. "How could you threaten to evict your own mother?" "I'm not threatening anyone," I replied. "I'm enforcing the legal conditions Dad put in place. Stop the modifications. Remove Stefan from any decision-making role, and you can stay forever. That's always been the deal." "Stefan says you're trying to steal my home." "Stefan's wrong. I'm trying to save Dad's legacy, and Mom Stefan's the one planning to steal it. I have the contractor meetings on video." She hung up. 2 weeks later, my security cameras caught Stefan with 3 contractors walking the property. "Once we get the old lady's daughter out of the picture," he said clearly, "we got this place. Flip it for $2 million easy." I saved the video in 6 different locations. Then I called Harold. "They're not responding to the notices." "They're accelerating the destruction," I said. "Yesterday they tore out the built-in telephone nook. Today they're getting estimates for vinyl siding." "Then we file," Harold said. "Monday morning, North Sound County Probate Court. Bring everything." The numbers told a story Stefan didn't want to hear. Riverfield's rental market had exploded 38% increase in 3 years. The house, even with the damage, appraised at $1.2 million. Property taxes I'd been paying $14,000 annually. Insurance, $3,600. Maintenance I'd covered while they destroyed $8,000. And through it all, Mom lived rent-free while her boyfriend calculated his fictional equity. I sent the final ultimatum through Harold, but I delivered my own message first. "I'm offering you a choice." I told Mom over coffee at a neutral location, the diner where Dad used to take me for Saturday breakfasts. "Sign a formal lease agreement, pay market-rate rent, or at least cover taxes and insurance. Agree in writing to restore what's been damaged and stop all modifications. Stefan and his children sign acknowledging they have no ownership claims and are guests only. Or," Mom's hands shook around her cup, "or you have 60 days to relocate. I'll help you find a nice apartment, cover first and last month's rent, help you move. But Stefan's dismantling of Dad's life's work stops now." You're making me choose between my home and my happiness. No, I'm asking you to choose between honoring the legal agreement Dad created and facing the consequences of breaking it. You can be happy anywhere, Mom, but there's only one Rourke house. She left without ordering. That afternoon, Stefan launched his campaign. The Facebook posts started within hours. Photos of Mom crying, Blake holding his pregnant girlfriend's hand. Suddenly she was 4 months along. Suddenly they were desperate for stable housing. Lena posted about family homes being stolen by heartless millennials. The narrative was crafted: elderly widow, cruel daughter, innocent baby on the way, Christian family values under attack. They held a prayer circle on the front lawn, 20 people from Mom's church, holding hands around the Japanese maple Dad had planted for my 5th birthday. Pastor Williams led prayers for family reconciliation and hearts softened by God's love. Local news picked it up. Family drama threatens historic Riverfield home. But they made a critical error. They let reporters onto the property. I watched through security cameras as Stefan gave tours, pointing out his improvements, the vinyl windows he'd installed without permits, the modern fixtures replacing historical hardware, the painted-over woodwork. A preservation blogger named Sarah Martinez noticed immediately, posting a scathing article, Historical Vandalism Disguised as Family Values. The Historical Society got involved. The permit department opened an investigation. Suddenly, Stefan's improvements were city violations with daily fines. You did this. Stefan confronted me at my apartment building. Blake sat in their truck, engine running. You turned the city against us. I didn't have to. You did it yourself, publicly, on camera. Every modification you bragged about is a violation of city code. Your mother's devastated. Lena's baby needs a stable home. Lena's been pregnant with 3 different men's babies in 2 years, according to her Instagram. Which one is this? His face darkened. You're a cold bitch, just like your father. My father was a craftsman who respected history, and if you actually knew him, you'd know he was never cold. He just didn't tolerate people who destroyed beautiful things. We'll fight this. Community support. The community that's now aware you've been destroying a historical landmark. The church members who just learned you've been living rent-free in a $1 million house while claiming hardship. The neighbors who discovered those motorcycle parts Blake's been selling belonged to items stolen from their garages. I'd been thorough. Every crime, every lie, every manipulation documented and strategically released. Not maliciously, just truthfully. The security footage of Blake's garage sales featuring items reported stolen. Stefan's LinkedIn claiming he owned a $1 million restoration property. Lena's GoFundMe for pregnancy expenses, while posting vacation photos from Vegas. You have 48 hours to respond to the legal notices, I said. Sign the lease agreement or start packing. Your father would be ashamed, Stefan spat. I pulled out my phone, played the audio of Dad's voice from a video he'd recorded in his workshop. The thing about termites, Ava, is they look solid on the surface while eating away the foundation. Sometimes you have to cut out the whole infected section to save the structure. Stefan stormed off. Blake peeled out, leaving tire marks on the street. That night, Mom called. They're saying if we sign your lease, it's admitting we don't own anything, that we're just tenants. That's exactly what you are, Mom. That's what Dad's trust specified. You're a tenant with lifetime rights, as long as you follow the conditions. Stefan says we should fight. That possession is 9/10 of the law. Then Stefan doesn't understand property law, or trusts, or historical preservation requirements, or permit violations, or— Stop, her voice cracked. Just stop. We're not signing anything. Then I'll see you in court. Monday morning, Harold filed everything at North Sound County Probate Court. The case Rourke v. Rourke, et al. Petition for declaratory judgment confirming my sole ownership. Motion to terminate residency rights for material breach. Request for temporary restraining order against further modifications. Demand for restoration costs. And the nuclear option, unlawful detainer if they refuse to vacate. We're also filing for an emergency hearing. Harold explained. The ongoing damage constitutes irreparable harm to a historical property. The Turo was granted within 72 hours. A process server delivered it during their family dinner. The security footage showed Stefan reading it aloud, his face purpling with each paragraph. No more modifications, no removal of fixtures, no contractors on property. Any violation would constitute contempt of court. They hired an attorney, Stefan's cousin from 2 towns over, a personal injury lawyer who'd never handled property law. He filed a response claiming equitable ownership through sweat equity and detrimental reliance. He attached Stefan's itemized list of improvements, apparently not realizing he was documenting evidence of vandalism. Harold was almost gleeful. They're admitting to everything, every destroyed fixture, every unpermitted modification. It's like they're prosecuting themselves. The evidence packet we submitted was overwhelming. Exhibit A. The trust documents with highlighted provisions. Mom's conditional residency. Prohibition against third-party control. Requirement for written consent for modifications. Exhibit B. Dad's letter explaining the trust structure and his intentions. Exhibit C. Before and after photographs. 274 A's. Images. Showing systematic destruction of historical features. Exhibit D. The architectural assessment detailing $85,000 in damages. Exhibit E. Video recordings from security cameras. Stefan discussing flipping the house. Blake stealing from neighbors. Contractors planning illegal modifications. Exhibit F. Email chains where I attempted resolution. Their responses refusing cooperation. Exhibit G. City violations and fines for unpermitted work. Exhibit H. The Historical Society's letter threatening to revoke the property's designation. Their attorney tried to argue emotional claims. The family home where Mom had built her life. Stefan's good faith improvements. The innocent baby needing shelter. He presented no legal precedent, no statutory authority, just sob stories and accusations that I was heartless. Your client claims sweat equity, Judge Harrison interrupted. Under what legal theory? Well, Your Honor, Mr. Hale has invested substantial time and money into property he doesn't own, without permission from the legal owner, while the resident he claims to be helping is in clear violation of her occupancy agreement. Counselor, are you familiar with State v. Morrison? Their lawyer wasn't. Harold was. It was the case establishing that unauthorized improvements to another's property, regardless of claimed value, constitute trespass and potential vandalism, not equity. Your Honor, Harold stood. We have one more piece of evidence that directly addresses the defendant's claims. He presented the contractor's estimate Stefan had gotten not for repairs, but for a complete renovation after securing full ownership, dated 2 weeks after Mom's initial breach of the trust conditions, including notes in Stefan's handwriting, after we get A, out, and flip potential 2M+. Mr. Hale, the judge addressed Stefan directly, did you enter into a relationship with Mrs. Rourke with the intention of acquiring this property? I love Margaret, Stefan protested. That's not what I asked. Did you research this property's value before or after meeting Mrs. Rourke? Silence. I have Mr. Hale's browser history, Your Honor. I spoke for the first time. Subpoenaed from his ISP, he searched the property's tax assessment 3 days before attending his first grief support meeting, the one where he met my mother. The courtroom went silent. Mom's face crumbled as she turned to stare at Stefan. These are violations of privacy, their attorney sputtered. These are public records and legally subpoenaed documents, Harold corrected. Mr. Hale also contacted 3 real estate investors about a potential flip opportunity in Riverfield before ever entering the house. The judge reviewed the browser history, Zillow estimates, tax records, historical designation research, all dated before Stefan ever brought that first casserole. Mr. Hale, did you research Mrs. Rourke's recent widowhood before attending that specific grief support group? More silence. Your Honor, Harold continued, we have evidence Mr. Hale attended 4 different grief support groups in the county that month. He stopped attending the others after meeting Mrs. Rourke. Mom made a sound small, broken. Lena reached for her hand, but Mom pulled away. I've seen enough, Judge Harrison announced. This court finds clear and convincing evidence of breach of the conditional residency agreement. The modifications made without owner consent constitute vandalism of a historical property. The claim of sweat equity is without merit state vice. Morrison is controlling. Judge Harrison adjusted her glasses, looking directly at Stephan. Mr. Hale, do you have written permission from the property owner for any of the structural modifications you've admitted to making? Silence stretched across the courtroom. Stephan's cousin shuffled papers desperately. It's a yes or no question, Counselor. No, Your Honor, but do you have any legal documentation establishing ownership interest in the property? No, but Miss Hale's investment of time and resources into someone else's property without permission. The judge turned to the architectural assessor. Can you explain the damage to the court? The assessor stood. Original 1912 brass hardware replaced with modern fixtures. Hand-carved trim painted over impossible to restore without stripping damage. Original telephone nook destroyed. Period-appropriate wallpaper covered. These aren't improvements, Your Honor. They're the destruction of documented historical features. Your Honor, Stephan's cousin tried again. Surely the court must consider the human element. Mrs. Rourke has lived in this home for 35 years. Under a legal agreement she's violated. Judge Harrison cut him off. Mr. Hale, did you read the trust documents before beginning your modifications? Margaret said, Did you read them, yes or no? No. So you made substantial changes to a property without determining who owned it or what legal restrictions existed. Stephan's face flushed. I was helping my partner maintain her home. The home she didn't own. With modifications she had no authority to approve. The judge pulled up the security video on her laptop. Is this you, Mr. Hale, telling contractors you plan to gut this place once you get the old lady's daughter out of the picture? The courtroom heard Stephan's recorded voice clearly. Mom's sharp intake of breath cut through the silence. That was taken out of context. The context seems clear. You're discussing the disposal of someone else's property for profit. Judge Harrison turned to me. Ms. Rourke, you've been paying all property expenses. Yes, Your Honor. Taxes, insurance, maintenance, $25 or $600 annually, while the property was being vandalized against my explicit objections. And you attempted resolution before filing. Harold presented the notices, the lease offers, the attempts at negotiation. Ms. Rourke offered her mother lifetime residency if they simply stopped destroying historical features and acknowledged the existing ownership structure. They refused. Mrs. Rourke, the judge addressed my mother, do you understand that your residency rights were conditional on maintaining the property's historical integrity? Mom looked small, fragile. Stephan said those old rules didn't matter anymore. Legal agreements don't expire with grief. Mrs. Rourke, you had an obligation to preserve what you didn't own. Blake suddenly stood. This is bullshit. We've been living there. It's our home. Sit down. Mr. Hale, or I'll have you removed. The judge's voice was steel. You're a guest who's been living rent-free in someone else's property. Your presence there is at the sufferance of either the owner or the legal resident, neither of whom are you. Your Honor, Harold stood. We'd like to address the claim about the pregnancy and housing needs. Proceed. Ms. Lena Hale has claimed pregnancy-related hardship. However, social media records show she's claimed 3 different pregnancies in 2 years, all with different partners, all coinciding with housing disputes. The current claim appears to be another manipulation tactic. That's invasion of privacy, Lena shrieked. That's publicly posted information, Harold corrected. You can't claim private hardship while broadcasting contradictions publicly. Judge Harrison had heard enough. She began reading her decision. This court finds that Ava Rourke is the sole legal owner of the property at 42 Craftsman Way. The court further finds that Margaret Rourke has materially breached her conditional residency agreement through unauthorized modifications and delegating decision-making authority to non-parties. Mom started crying silently. The court hereby terminates Margaret Rourke's residency rights effective immediately. A writ of possession is granted to Ava Rourke. The defendants have 72 hours to vacate the premises. Your Honor, Stefan's cousin protested, 72 hours is generous, considering the deliberate destruction of historical property. The court further orders that no additional fixtures, features, or items may be removed from the property. Any further damage will be considered criminal vandalism. What about Mr. Hale's investments? The cousin tried one last time. Mr. Hale's investments constitute vandalism. He's fortunate Ms. Rourke hasn't filed criminal charges, yet. The judge looked at me. You retain the right to pursue restoration costs civilly. Stefan exploded. You manipulative bitch. You planned this from the beginning, your father's turning in his grave watching you throw out your mother. Mr. Hale, another outburst and you'll be held in contempt. Judge Harrison's gavel came down hard. This court is adjourned. I stood as they filed out. Mom wouldn't look at me. Blake muttered threats. Lena wailed dramatically. But Stefan looked at the house photos on the evidence table, calculating even now what he'd lost. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I gathered my documents, every piece of evidence of what they'd tried to steal, what I'd fought to save. Harold touched my shoulder. You did what was necessary. I did what Dad prepared me to do, I replied, holding the letter he'd written. I saved what could be saved. The sheriff's department arrived at 9 a.m. on Thursday. I stood in the driveway with Harold, holding the writ of possession, 2 officers, a locksmith, and a moving crew I'd hired to carefully pack Mom's actual belongings, not Stefan's claimed improvements. Neighbors gathered on the sidewalk. Some who'd supported Stefan's prayer circles now whispered about the news article detailing his premeditated targeting of my mother. Sarah Martinez from the Historical Society was there, documenting the restoration process that would begin immediately. Stefan answered the door unshaven, defiant. We're not leaving. Sir, you need to vacate immediately, the lead officer stated. You have 1 hour to gather personal belongings. This is our home. No, sir. According to this court order, it's Ms. Rourke's home, 1 hour. I walked through with the officers, tablet in hand, checking off items against my documentation. Every original fixture Dad had restored was photographed and verified. The moving crew, specialists in historical properties, carefully packed Mom's clothes, photos, personal items, everything actually hers. Blake emerged from the garage, tools in his arms. These are mine. I pulled up the receipts on my tablet. Those are 1930s craftsman tools from Dad's collection. Receipt dated 1997. Put them back. He threw them on the ground. The officer picked them up, handed them to me. Damage any property during this removal, and you'll be arrested. Lena claimed the dining room curtains were hers. I showed the photo from Dad's documentation curtains installed in 2010, his handwriting on the back describing the source. Everything they tried to take, I could prove wasn't theirs. Mom sat in the living room, not moving, not packing. I approached her with a box of her actual possessions jewelry Dad had given her, their wedding album, her mother's china. I gathered your things, I said quietly. The real things, not what Stefan brought. She looked at me with hollow eyes. He was using me. Yes. From the beginning. The browser history suggests so. You knew. I suspected when he started the modifications. I knew when I subpoenaed his records. She stood slowly, taking the box. Your father would have... Dad would have done exactly what I did. He prepared me for this. He knew someone might try. I'm your mother, and you'll always be my mother, but you chose him over Dad's legacy. I chose to save what Dad preserved. She walked past me without another word. Stefan was arguing with the officers about his sweat equity receipts. They weren't interested. The locksmith had already started changing the locks. You'll regret this, Stefan told me as he was escorted out. When she dies alone because you chose property over family. I chose preservation over destruction. Mom chose you over the trust my father left. We all made choices. The house emptied in 45 minutes. Blake's motorcycle leaked one last oil stain as he drove away. Lena left screaming about lawsuits. Mom got into Stefan's truck without looking back. The silence after they left was profound. I stood in Dad's workshop, surrounded by tools they'd tried to steal, wood they'd nearly destroyed. The assessor walked through with me, noting every repair needed, $85,000 to restore what they'd damaged. Insurance would cover some, the rest I'd manage. You did the right thing, Sarah Martinez said, photographing the painted-over trim for her blog. This house is irreplaceable. So was my relationship with my mother. She made that choice when she let them destroy it. I spent the first night alone in the house, walking through rooms that echoed with memory. Dad's coffee mug back on his workshop bench. The telephone nook's remains waiting for restoration, each room holding its breath, waiting to be saved. Harold called the next morning. Stefan's cousin withdrew from representation. Your mother's filed for senior housing assistance. Stefan's apparently moved on to another grief support group in the next county. Of course he has. You could have destroyed him. Criminal charges for vandalism, elder financial abuse allegations. You showed restraint. I got what I wanted. The house is safe. 6 months later, the restoration was complete. Every piece of trim stripped and restored. Original hardware reinstalled. The telephone nook rebuilt from period materials. The Historical Society featured the house on their annual tour, calling it a testament to preservation through adversity. Mom never contacted me. I heard through others she'd moved to a senior community, joined a new church, told people she had no children. Stefan faced fraud charges in another county. Apparently I wasn't his first widow. I keep Dad's letter in his workshop, now restored exactly as he left it. Sometimes I read the line that matters most. The house will outlive us all if protected. He was right. The house stands, preserved, remembered. Every beam and board holding the memory of hands that built with love, not greed. Protected not by tears or rage, but by documentation, preparation, and the cold efficiency of justice. Some revenge doesn't need screaming. Sometimes all it takes is a court seal and the will to use it. Thank you for listening to this story. I'd love to hear where you're listening from. Drop a comment, and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts below. What would you have done in Ava's situation?